Did you ever build with Legos? And did you ever get enough of them that you didn't use the instructions for any specific kit? You just started assembling the things to see what you could make from it. That's what we're doing with this robot.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am so glad you are back with us again. This is part of our Homeschooling Every Subject series. And this week we are talking with Robert Walsh. He is from Excalibur Solutions STEM Academy. And in Monday's episode, he talked all about STEM and what STEM is, the definition of it, what it really means, what it doesn't mean. He gave some really great insight into what STEM is and how we can start teaching that in our homeschool. So if you missed Monday's episode, go back and listen. We're going to continue talking about that today and tomorrow. But before we get back into our conversation, I want to say thank you again to our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. They have everything that you guys need. I'm assuming they probably even have some STEM type things, though I know they've got math, of course, as part of their curriculum, and they've got science. I'm sure they've got some technology and stuff. I should go back. I should actually look and see what they have in regards to STEM, but they've got something for everyone. So whatever you're looking for from a strong biblical worldview, BJU Press has you covered. Check them out at bjupresshomeschool.com. Well, Robert, welcome back. This has been such a fun conversation already so far. And as you were talking on Monday, one of the questions that I have, I actually have a lot of questions for you, so many questions, but two that kind of popped into my mind were, one, as far as setting that foundation for our kids and them going on to those websites and those platforms that you were talking about on Monday, where do they, I don't want to say what age, because I know every child is different in their ability to learn. At what level of learning should they be at? So I'm thinking about math. Could they possibly move into something like this if they are, more advanced in math, or if they're struggling in math? Talk about that. Like, what level should our kids be at? Maybe kind of an age range that you see kids jumping into this. And then I have another question after that.
Sure. So at the Excalibur Solutions STEM Academy, we sort of target our programs towards students beginning around third grade, so around 9 years old.
Okay.
And then we have projects that can take them all the way up through high school. The reason that we picked third grade or thereabouts is because not only have they gotten sort of basic arithmetic in math, number sense, you know how to compare numbers, you maybe know a little bit about negative numbers and positive numbers and the number line and things like that. Right. They also understand the basic arithmetic function. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, maybe division by that age. And that is really what you need to be able to start working in programming. Programming and math are sort of hard to separate from one another. And so you're going to be doing those sorts of things in almost every programming language that you ever use or ever program that you ever write. But the other thing about that age group is that's the point at which we think they have enough of an attention span to sit and actually follow a series of instructions to complete a project. And they have the basic dexterity necessary to manipulate the keyboard, to move the mouse. What we find with younger kids, particularly with the mouse, is their hands aren't big enough. And so they rest their hand on the sort of the dome part, which is the back, but they can't reach the buttons to click. Now, obviously, if you have a touchpad, that's not as big of an issue, but that's really why we sort of stick to the third grade, 9 years old range. There are products that are designed for younger students. Scratch, for example, has a product called Scratch Junior, which is designed for maybe preschool level kids. There are lots of physical projects that you can purchase for your children that are designed for younger kids. So there's one called Snap Circuits, where you get to do electrical circuits, but you're snapping together little blocks with magnets, and the magnets are what conduct the electricity through the pieces. There are some robotics projects where you program the robot, not necessarily by giving it instruction, but by putting tiles on the floor, and the tile has an instruction on it, either in a QR code or some other kind of an image that the robot can recognize. And so you're actually programming the robot by the way you put the tiles on the floor. And what the robot does when it sees a tile directs it to the next task in the program. So while you can work with kids who are younger than that third grade age range, that's where I think that it's a good place to start with programming type activities and things that require the student to use a computer to perform the actual tasks. Now, as far as just going back to the math for a second, basic number sense, plane geometry, which is XY coordinates, plotting points, things like that. Scratch is a really good way to reinforce the geometry concepts because the action in Scratch takes place in a part of the workspace called the stage. And the stage is where you put your characters. But underneath the stage is an XY coordinate system with the origin in the middle. So that's your 0, 0 point. And then you've got X and Y that move out left and right and up and down. And so you have to know where you want to put things and how you want to move things and how you want to turn things. So you're reinforcing a lot of those geometrical concepts. We actually have a project in our library for subscribers that is a recreation of the old Asteroids video game, if you remember the little ship that has to shoot up all the rocks. So we have a version of that. And it's written in Scratch. So even though we used a very simple language, the students are actually employing and applying trigonometry concepts, so sine and cosine. Because when you turn your ship, you have to figure out what direction it's pointing, and it has a velocity. How fast is it traveling? Well, when you take a direction and a speed, you have something called a vector. And to get the x coordinate and the y coordinate, or the length of the x and the y parts of a vector, you have to use sine and cosine against the angle. So not to get too deep into that, and we don't necessarily expect the students already come to us knowing trigonometry, but those are the types of math concepts that you might end up applying. Now, obviously, if you went to work for a company that wrote accounting software, you'd have to know a lot more about the math associated with accounting. If you wanted to do 3D modeling software, you might have to know things like calculus and how a flat surface gets rotated to create a solid surface from it. And so the type of math that you need is going to be very context specific at that point.
That's so interesting. It's funny, you're talking about snap circuits and snapping blocks together. And I'm thinking about how many, it's a big homeschool thing, of course, because our kids have time to sit and even playing with Legos and just building things like that. And then thinking through games. I don't know a lot about video games. We're not a video game family, but when my oldest was maybe 9 or 10, 8, somewhere around there. She used to play Minecraft, and she would show me her little Minecraft designs and houses and stuff. Are things like that helpful and learn, and I'm not endorsing video games as an obsession, of course, but can it be helpful for kids to play games like Minecraft and do things like building Legos and stuff like that?
Yes, definitely building with Legos. I'll give an example. In addition to what we do for homeschool families, we also teach classes at rural or small private schools. And one of the classes I'm teaching this semester is robotics. So I'm teaching a group of 10th grade students how to build and program a robot. Yeah. And so we compare it a lot to, as a matter of fact, in class yesterday, I said to them, I don't have, you guys might think I have the instruction guide for this class or the teacher's manual. I don't, there isn't one. We are designing a robot from the ground up, and there is no right or wrong answer. So I compared it to, did you ever build with Legos? And did you ever get enough of them that you didn't use the instructions for any specific kit? You just started assembling the things to see what you could make from it. That's what we're doing with this robot. So yes, that definitely is a transferable skill. Things like Minecraft and Roblox, I'm a little bit more ambivalent about those. I think that you can learn some very valuable skills from them. Minecraft, particularly, you're learning about spatial visualization, similar in the way that you would do with Tinkercad, because you're building 3D structures in your little virtual world. And so you've got to understand what it means to place a block or destroy a block or change a blocks or whatever. Roblox has a much deeper programming component element to it, but it's quite complex in my opinion. So it's not something, I think that the younger students in Roblox are going to be more involved in playing than they are in programming. And so I think the benefit of using Roblox in that context is a little bit less.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you mentioned about video games, and I think video games are quite interesting. We have a lot of projects in our library that are video games. They write the video game, and then their reward for completing the project, of course, is they get to play the game afterwards. There's a lot of math. There's a lot of physics. There's a lot of logic in games. And so when you use games as the way to write the program, use it as the medium for teaching the concept, you have to think a lot about how you end up playing games. Because think something like tic-tac-toe. All right, we all know how to play tic-tac-toe, and we probably don't even remember the very first time we ever played it when we didn't know how to play it and someone was first teaching us how to play tic-tac-toe. It's intuitive to us. Guess the number, rock, paper, scissors, they're all like that. But when you want to program a computer to do those things, computers don't have intuition. And despite what we might think about artificial intelligence, there is no intelligence in a computer. Everything the computer does has to be programmed. It has to be told in very comprehensive and unambiguous terms what it is you want it to do. So if you want the computer to play tic-tac-toe, you have to figure out how to give it a human-like strategy for playing tic-tac-toe. And so in those contexts, I think that playing the game and starting to think about how the game is played or how the computer would play that game is a very, very valuable way to transition into problem solving and logical thinking and all those kinds of areas.
It's exciting to see what computers can do, and it's absolutely terrifying all at the same time. So, oh my goodness, we live in a very, very interesting time right now. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Have you tried CTC Math yet with your child? Here's a testimonial from another happy homeschool mom. Amber said, "I'm absolutely thrilled with CTC Math. It's a rare find that I've used with my children for more than 5 years now. I have 6 children using CTC Math, and each child has found it easy to navigate and very applicable. Thank you so much for all that you are doing in providing quality math lessons for my children." If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. Join Apologia for the Homeschool Bootcamp, a free video series that provides practical guidance and wisdom from experienced homeschool parents. You'll discover how to equip your family for academic, social, and spiritual success. Plus, you'll discover how to build deeper and stronger family relationships. Homeschool Bootcamp covers how to break free from the public school mindset, daily planning, supporting students with learning challenges, homeschooling as a working parent, navigating the high school years, and much more. Find this incredible free homeschool resource at apologia.com/bootcamp. We are back with Robert. We kind of left off with this cliffhanger at the end of Monday's episode, but I wanted to ask about math and playing games and all of that before we got to this. And so we were talking about how it can benefit parents to learn alongside of their kids as they're learning STEM, especially. And you mentioned for moms like myself who just don't quite understand all of this stuff. My brain's just not wired that way. Talk about the benefits of kids who are maybe not wired this way to learn and understand STEM.
So I think that there are many benefits that you derive from STEM education. Obviously, I wouldn't be working in it if I didn't.
Sure.
The ones that most people think of are the very direct benefits. So like you learn how to program a computer that makes it possible for you to become a computer programmer. You learn to build a robot, so maybe you can become a mechanical engineer. All right, so those are direct transfer type benefits. But I think that there's a lot of benefits that are more abstract and that might be applicable both in technical and in non-technical contexts. And these would include things like problem solving and logical reasoning that we've spoken a little bit about already. And then there are some other that I think are very tangible benefits, but they're more indirect. And I'm going to give an example, and I'll go into detail on this in a minute. Becoming a better writer. I believe that learning to be a programmer will improve your writing skills in English or language arts. I also think that you get the opportunity to learn a wide variety of computer applications like Office suites, Google or Microsoft Office, or things like Canva, how to use your email effectively, things like that, because we use those in non-technical purposes as well. Every job you could ever have today is going to require you to do those things. So just the more familiar you are with the computer and the keyboard and so on, it's going to make those things much easier for you later when it's time for you to get a job. But let me focus for a minute on some of what are called 21st century skills. All right, I mentioned problem solving. A STEM project often starts with a description of what it is that we want to accomplish. For example, we might say that we're going to write a video game. All right. To begin with, we have to figure out what's our game going to do. We need a plan. We probably need to break it down into smaller problems. So like in that asteroids games I mentioned, you've got to figure out how you're going to rotate the ship. You know, what keys are going to be used to turn it left and right? How are you going to shoot your missiles that can blow up the rocks? How are the rocks going to move? All of those are individual problems, and they all have to be solved independently and then integrated back into a whole. And if you think about that, that's how we solve problems every day, right? We don't usually say, I got to fix the garage door. Well, you got to figure out what's wrong with the garage door first, and then you got to figure out what's it going to take to disassemble the parts that are broken and reassemble the parts to repair it. So that, again, is something that I think is very valuable that you learn from doing these types of projects. Ultimately, you've got to test the result. Did you integrate everything correctly? Does it work? Are there things that don't? And if they're not, what can we do to fix those things? So it's all about how to get feedback from your prototype or your first iteration, your first attempt to solve the problem. And that's something called the engineering design process. It's how engineers solve problems every day. Some people can simplify it to what's called the plan, do, review approach. But learning to tackle problems like this equips students to solve both technical and non-technical problems. This is the approach to project management that we use, whether it's a technical problem or a non-technical problem that we're solving. Now, I mentioned also that you can be a better writer if you learn to become a computer programmer.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you write things like project plans and technical documentation, you get the opportunity to practice skills that may differ from the way that you would do creative writing in English or language arts, because writing technical documents is different than creative writing.
Yeah.
But beyond that, learning a computer language is just like learning any other language, whether it's English or a foreign language like French or German. Every language has a grammar, it has a syntax, and it has a vocabulary. And together, those form the words that we can use and the rules and the punctuation that we use to put them together to give them meaning. The difference when you're learning a computer language is that every one of those things has to be used correctly, or your program doesn't work.
Right.
Now, someone once told me that English is the easiest language to speak badly and still be understood. And if you think about it, we do this all the time. We text each other in abbreviations that are far more obscure than any computer language I've ever used. We misspell words. We don't use punctuation. There's all these different ways we break the rules of our language, and somehow the other person understands what it is that we're trying to say. Well, computers don't work that way. When you're working in any kind of a text-based programming language, there's usually only one word to do what you want. There are no synonyms. So you have to pick exactly the word you need for the particular situation you're trying to work with. You have to use certain punctuation in certain places. Words have to be spelled correctly. And usually they also have to be capitalized correctly, because most text-based computer programming language are what's called case sensitive. And that means that capitalization is part of the spelling. If I have two words that are spelled the same but capitalized differently, the computer sees them as two completely different words. So it's my opinion that if students learn to abide by the rules of the computer language they're learning, they just become naturally more attuned to the rules of regular written language. It's not a switch that you turn off and say, oh, I'm a programmer right now, I have to pay attention to my language. I think that you're paying attention to it. And so now the next time you write your English paper, you're going to be more attuned to that. There's a comma that has to go there. So that's why I think that learning programming particularly can benefit people in many, many other ways, one of which is improving your writing skills.
Yeah, it's so interesting because thinking through that and how even just the process of troubleshooting.
Oh, yeah.
As they're learning, I mean, as people, as humans, but I'm thinking about as moms, like our job, a big part of our job, especially as homeschooling moms, is to troubleshoot. Like we need to figure out there's a problem. What is the problem and how do I fix the problem?
Yeah.
And so as kids are learning those things and then learning logic along with that, I'm studying logic this year with my daughter, and it's just fascinating to study through the subject of logic because it teaches us how to think logically about things. It teaches you not to just have information fed to you, but to actually process what the information is that's coming into your brain. And I love even doing that, from we're using a logic book from Master Books. And so we're learning how to do that through a biblical lens. And so not only are you getting math, and not only are you, becoming a better writer and maybe a better speller, maybe you're not going to use LOL in every text that you send, but you're learning all these things, but then you're also learning troubleshooting, which is an incredibly important life skill
Definitely.
And you're learning logic. And so I love that. You're right. There are so many things that can benefit us just as humans.
So let me expand on that troubleshooting just for 1 second. Because
Sure.
as a mom, you obviously, if something goes wrong, you want to figure out what went wrong.
Right.
But then do you also ever think, how could I prevent this from going wrong in the future?
Right.
So you're having to anticipate things that might go wrong and find ways to either address them when they do or avoid
Right.
them so that you don't have to deal with them.
Right.
Programming is exactly the same way. If I issue an instruction to the computer, I have to think about, is this always going to succeed? Or are there things that might go wrong? Because the program, once it goes wrong, it doesn't know what to do. It can't think on its feet and
Right.
find some alternative path. It's just going to say, sorry. And so the programmer has to learn to anticipate what can fail. And then they either have to have a plan for when it does fail, or can they write the program a little bit differently to either eliminate or at least significantly reduce the likelihood that one of those bad things actually will happen.
Yeah.
So as you said, those are skills that also spill over into our everyday life in non-technical activities as well.
Yep. So much good stuff. We are out of time again, but we're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to continue talking about STEM. Tell us one more time, you give the website, but we'll put it in the show notes.
Sure.
Where can people find out more about Excalibur Solutions STEM Academy?
Yep. Our website is https://stem.excalibur-solutions.com.
All right. Awesome. We will put that link in the show notes. You guys, thank you so much for listening today or watching. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. And if you're listening to the podcast, please share this with your friends, whether you're watching or listening. Share this with your friends so that they can be encouraged. You've got those, I know you guys have friends who have kids who are these STEM type of kids, but share this whole series with them. We're talking through all of the major subjects that we teach in homeschool. And I know that this has already been an encouragement to me. I hope it's an encouragement to you as well. So share this with your friends. We would really appreciate that. That helps us so much. And make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and to the podcast. Thank you guys for being with us. You can find everything at our website, schoolhouserocked.com. Stay tuned at the very end to hear what's coming up next, and we will see you back here tomorrow. Bye.
You're listening to the Biblical Family Network.
Hey, I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And we're the co-hosts of the Culture Proof podcast. We want to invite you to join us every week as we discuss what's happening in the world and then filter those happenings through a decidedly biblical lens.
There are many questions, especially when we see what's happening in our culture today, but the answers are found within the Word of God. So that's where we want to look.
Amen. When we resist those cultural trends that rival the truth,
We remain culture proof.
STEM is unique in a lot of education fields because biblical worldview doesn't really come into play all that much. Things are just what they are.
Sure.
Electrons are electrons, and they work. And
Math is math.
That's what allows our electrical circuits to work.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that God, as the creator, is what gave us the ability to know and understand these things, and then to utilize them in some way to influence our world around us.
That's right.
And so obviously we want to take that ability to see and understand the creation and to put it to good use, to better our society in some way.